Good day, Patrick Johnson. When we talked about doing a video today earlier in the week, we figured we'd be talking about second round, and that's not what we're talking about. So you tell me what we're talking about ahead of Game 6 in Nashville.
Well, Friday night is Game 6. Game 5, which was on Tuesday, was in the end a very stupid hockey game.
Yeah, it was.
A game the Canucks really should have won. They knew they should have won. They were frustrated post game. You take your chances. Like they played so well that first period. And Andrew Burnett basically after the game said that's the best I've seen them play. He didn't sort of lament his team's performance. He said the Canucks just controlled the game and didn't take they had some chances to score, didn't score. UC Saros, I think, had the best game of his playoffs so far.
His life.
But just the way he played, like obviously a lot of people talk about the Pettersson 2-on-1 when Pettersson missed a shot for one, but still Saros, who's not a big goalie, played pretty big. That chance that Brock Besser had late in the game from the slot, which was a tricky play for him to collect, but he got everything on that shot, right? Yeah. Like Saros barely got his leg on it. So, like he did what he needed to do. And, you feel for Artur Silovs, who played very well. And, I know lots of people screamed about that thinking it was goaltender interference. I don't really, there's a loose puck and there's people around the net and people are getting jostled. Like Artur Silov is lying on his back. Like, I don't know how you can, anyway, I didn't have a problem with it. I was online with talking. Like, he said, I think he was generous saying it was a 50-50 chance. I don't think there was much chance at all that the NHL was going to overturn that. Even if you do feel that it should have gone the other way, that's just the facts. The NHL just doesn't overturn calls like that. Like in the end, they didn't get a bounce, and they lost. And now we're going to Nashville. And I think the Canucks are still playing well enough. Like their defense is strong enough. And I talked to Jim Rutherford about this morning. Obviously they know they need to create more on offense, but they're playing so well defensively. I mean, the story obviously, look how few shots they have. Well, look how few goals they've given up, right? Like they haven't gotten blown out of the water. They haven't won the series because in the end they haven't scored enough. Nikita Zadorov is the only guy who scored in the last two games at home.
Can you make the argument that the better team in every game is lost?
Yeah, like that, because realistically, like that game on, Game 4 on Sunday in Nashville, like I didn't think the Canucks were as bad as people think they were. They weren't great, but they were still pretty strong defensively. But yeah, Nashville was better on offense. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The Canucks pulled one out when they needed to, got a big performance from a couple big players. Obviously, yeah, Game 3, like. It was it wasn't the most exciting hockey game, reasonably even. Yeah, sure, you could argue that. Game 2, obviously, Canucks should have won. I mean, the Canucks did not, domination is the wrong word, but they were the better team. They had more of the puck. They had more scoring chances. It's pretty simple, but they didn't play very smartly to create more than what they did.
No, it's just,
I think you're right. Every game, basically, other than maybe Game 3, every game's kind of gone the opposite way.
But when you look at playoff hockey, right, like there's the, 2 goals in 12 seconds. Turns it around, and the late goal by Brock Besser, the puck hits the post of the empty net. Last night, this goal, you finally break the deadlock. You're at home. It's the third period. You got a lead, and there's this scrambly goal. Like it just seemed, it epitomizes playoff hockey. Like in many respects, we think you're playing the same team 5, 6, 7 times, the best team is going to win. But it shows you hockey can be such a random game at times. I mean, the Canucks are actually lucky. I would say that they've probably been the better team in the balance of the series. But if you look at these moments, they are damn lucky that they have a lead in this series because they could easily be down 3-2.
It's also like it's just the story about the special, like their power play. It's not. I mean, we've been talking so much obviously about the Canucks penalty killing, but the power play. The power play didn't do anything. It literally did nothing last night, and in Game 4 or Game 5, and like I think that more than anything is what had Rick Tocchet frustrated after the game. He wasn't, I think, terribly in the end. He saw a couple chances for Elias Pettersson to be the game breaker that he's supposed to be. I think he's getting a bit frustrated about that. Didn't see it, but more than anything, the power play was just so brutal. Couldn't. Well, they gained the zone, and then they basically turn it over either through a bad pass, bad decision, bad forecheck. You look back to say, the Sedin's power play, which obviously was a different era and different sort of theory on how you make things work on the power play. But nonetheless, they had the same old attack up the left. They'd hand it to Daniel Sedin, who'd step on over the line with the puck, and then he'd keep moving. He'd drag everything down 15 feet and create a space behind him. And the Canucks aren't doing that. They're gaining the zone and then they're stopping and they're not moving. And that's driving Tocchet nuts. And I think it's driving all the players nuts because it's not working. Because when it works, like they're moving, they're snapping the puck. It's moving. And I think at the end of the day, that's your story here, is that this team just they're close, but it feels so far, and they're in this predicament. I mean, they're still winning 3-2, right? Like they still need to win one more game.
No, that's what I mean. It's like, they would have to lose the next two to avert disaster, but it doesn't. If something weird happens in Nashville, it just squeezes that much more.
Right.
But we've talked about this. They're missing Demko. They're arguably their best or their second best player is contributing very little, and you're still ahead in the series. So, let's talk about Pettersson. It's funny that you referenced the Sedins, because I remember so many playoff runs with them where it was like, what's wrong, or is someone hurt? And then when they're eliminated, you hear, oh yeah, Daniel had 3 powdered vertebrae and both of Henrik's hips were dislocated. It's just playoff hockey. Is it physical or mental with Pettersson? Because to be, and this is where the salary cap era has changed things, Patrick. It's an albatross around your neck, and people will talk about that. But I honestly look at, after 5 games, how much would 1 goal on the power play have helped from him in those losses?
Yeah, 1 goal. Like I basically wrote that in my story today. Like you pick out the 2 most obvious moments where you think in a normal circumstance he would score, which is the 2-on-1 late in the game 5, and the missed empty net in game 2 when he hooked it wide and looked at the skies and JT Miller thought he'd scored, and on and on and on. Like that goal in game 2, that changes the game. Like, that changes the complete course of the game, gives the Canucks some momentum, and it's a goal. It's a goal in the net. And, a game that, wouldn't necessarily, I mean, in the end, it was 3-1. They pulled the goalie late, lost 4-1. But, like, there was enough in that game. You get that goal, maybe it bursts the dam. But that goal, and then that chance late in the game on game 5, like that, he hit Saros in the mask. And normally he's picking corners. So if you're looking for evidence for a player whose shooting control is not what it is, and you want to say it's because of his wrist, that could be your evidence. We have seen him taping his wrist. He hasn't been showing any particular signs of injury. He's obviously not. By the time we come in the dressing room, usually he's not around. But you see him in the hallway, whatever. Like there's no obvious signs that there's an overall issue there. But he has had wrist issues in the past, and that's possible. I mean, he would never tell us what.
No, of course not. This is hockey. Why would you want any disclosure?
Yeah, but also there's a guy that just in the end it's like all these guys, but they don't want to show weakness. They don't want to sort of suggest that they're making an excuse. There's nothing a hockey person seems to like more than to be even accused of thinking about making an excuse. So there's that. A lot of people are just trying to tell me it's between the years. I talk, I asked Jim Rutherford. Jim Rutherford paused for a very long time, surprisingly for a long time, given when I asked him, and then his answer was, "I don't talk about injuries." So
but keep cashing those FanDuel checks. So let me ask you that though. You say again, I'm harkening back to all our old ghosts. I remember Tony Gallagher during one of those playoff runs where the Canucks underperformed, talking about how he was watching Henrik, the way he goes over the bench, and you could tell he was favoring his hip, right? You're saying, like, obviously if it's a wrist, you're not going to notice that. But when you see Pettersson around the rink in the halls, what's his body language like? Like, is he? I mean, you see the shots on ice; he's clearly frustrated.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of a way to think. There's all sorts of nuclear different anecdotes you can come up with for how to get out of a slump. How do you think he's steering his way through this? And what do you expect? Like, do you expect 1 goal to kind of break the dam and here we go? Or do you think these struggles are going to continue for a while?
Well, I mean, he scored the game after he signed his new contract. I thought that was the beginning of the rest of the season, that he was going to find his way. And then he didn't. So I mean, his body language, he is a very, very, very cautious, very stoic person. So no, you're not going to get anything from that he's standoffish. It's a choice he makes.
Yeah.
It's a sort of persona, whether that's his real persona or not, that's certainly one he chooses to project. So I'm sort of I come back to, in the end, like, maybe it is just between the years. But either way, they need him to score. Like, he's being paid to score. That's the bottom line. And
that's the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like,
they need goals, and he's not doing enough.
People will make fun of names like Petri Skriko or Tony Tanti from really bad eras of the Canucks. They were great players, but you need a playoff resume for people to put you in that category of all-time greats, right? This is why when you have your Canuck Mount Rushmore conversations, it's Linden, it's McLean, it's the Sedins, it's Bure. It's because they went on long playoff runs, and you're going to need that for any of these current players to really take that fond place in history in people's hearts down the road. What else do you see are the keys to finishing the series off?
Well, I mean, the key is still is to keep playing. Yeah, I mean, the defensive play has to stay the way it is, and I don't think there's any reason to think it won't. They've been very smart, very strong. They rarely have had chaotic defensive sequences. They had a couple last night. It's going to happen. Nashville's a strong NHL team, but fundamentally, they need to keep things under control. And they just need to find a way. They need the power play. They need to find some goals. Brock Besser, obviously, they found a big performance the last game in Nashville. They need to get that first goal of the game, and they looked like they were on their way to something. And then there was the bad sequence that ends with Silovs getting essentially jostled and knocking the puck. Like, he told me he didn't know where the puck was. He was trying to figure out where the puck was. So those are the worst circumstances. If he had a sense of where the puck was, he would have gotten frozen stiff, right? But he was trying to just get himself into a spot where he was going to be able to even get frozen stiff. And so whether he plays, whether DeSmith plays, and fundamentally what the team does in front of the goalie, what matters.
What are you hearing about the goaltending situation?
I have no idea.
Three of them. No idea. Yeah.
I mean, Demko, we're still thinking. I think Dhaliwal had this, and it's in line with what I've heard, that essentially if things go well, and maybe depends a little bit on the schedule if they make the second round, that he could be back by game 6, game 7. But that the Smith and Silovs are the guy that I still haven't figured. I mean, obviously, full disclosure, wasn't there in Nashville. So but everyone who was there tells me, DeSmith went through practice, was in great mood. And then Tocchet tells us on Monday that he obviously got hurt during the game on Friday. Yeah. And they came to the conclusion, even though he practiced in full and prepared in full, that he couldn't even sit on the bench. So,
well, we should move it along, because for one thing for me is, like, I mean, who knows? It's playoff hockey, right? With legends are built on guys who've played with famously broken legs or cracked vertebrae or whatever. I've made fun of that, but there's no doubt these guys are incredibly tough. Bringing a goalie back who's been out for 2 to 3 weeks with a supposed knee issue that will need treatment in the offseason, but he can play through it. I don't know if that's a great recipe, but, that would be a nice problem to have if they reach the end of the second round and are in that position to give that a shot. But let me ask you now, because this video, we generally, because of our mechanism, don't get a chance to produce these over the weekend. We'd have to wait till next week. Let's just cast our eyes ahead. It may be disaster, not doing Todd Bertuzzi, Minnesota Wild. That could happen, in which case we've got some great video content for next week. But in the meantime, if you're looking ahead to the next round, what do you think? What's the best scenario for them? And how is that matchup going to work? Because this Nashville was supposed to be, I don't want to say easy. I saw an interview with Chris Higgins yesterday where he thought that this series was very similar to when they played Nashville's, that everyone thought they were going to steamroll them. Yeah. And it ended up being much tougher than they thought. Yeah. I think people said, the Demko injury is tough, but you know what? They're going to get by Nashville. It's what happens in the next round. Yeah. What do you see, using your crystal ball, beyond this series for them?
Well, I mean, they're almost certainly going to play the Oilers. I think at the end of the day, you're looking at a team that in Edmonton that is hitting enough of the notes, and they're playing the Kings, who in the end are obviously very defensive. I think Jim Hiller might be getting out coached a little bit. I mean, the last game, it took him forever to pull his goalie. I was just absolutely gobsmacked how long it took him to pull a goalie in a game that had massive importance. And a game that his forwards had been playing pretty well. They just, anyway. I think in the end, Edmonton's going to take the series. So you're facing off against Edmonton, and obviously Connor McDavid, everything he represents, but also a team that you beat 4 times this year.
How'd that work out for the Jets?
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, you're exactly right. Like, that's the danger there. Obviously, this is the best offense. There's 2 offenses that you should be afraid of, and it's Edmonton's and it's Colorado's, and the Canucks are going to, if they win this round, the Canucks are going to face down that group. So it's about being as strong as you've been all season defensively, and I don't feel like the Oilers are as well organized as the Predators are, but went into this thing, the Predators were going to be giving away the middle of the ice, which was the Canucks' strength on offense, and that hasn't really played out. So
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it comes back to the same thing that's going to involve winning this series. Is the Canucks just need to find a way to rejuvenate things in the middle of the ice a little bit more.
I think it's fascinating. We've seen teams before really change their fortunes in between series, like not look so good in one and then look great in another. And the West is fascinating because they obviously had the early success against Edmonton, and then when they played them late on in the year and beat them again, they didn't have McDavid. Different animal here, but I do see that Edmonton and Vancouver are a little bit similar in that they have a lot to prove. The other 3 teams that I'm looking at are fascinating me. Obviously, recent Cup champs with Vegas and Colorado, they both look really good. Vegas again, and then Dallas coming back into that. I think that series is going to be a war, but it just shows, like, I'm not going to use the old mock the flip the switch type thing. But those are teams, in particular Colorado and Vegas, they've been playing possum a little bit, waiting to get to the playoffs. Now they know what it requires, and the Canucks are going to have to go through that to get there. So, if you had to pick one team right now to come out of the West, be champions of the West, and go to the Stanley Cup, who would it be?
Well, I think it's still going to stick with Dallas, who look like they're finally pulling themselves together against Vegas, and I think their depth and the way they play. And I'm a big fan of Pete DeBoer. I think I'm still sticking with Dallas as the favorites in the West here.
Okay. Good stuff. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, everyone, for watching, listening. We got all sorts of content for you. PJ's cranking stories out every day. We've got Ben. We've got JJ Adams, Steve Ewan also doing stuff. Got your playoff posters. We got a cool video up on the history of the white towel. You'll have these videos and content every single day. Sign up for Canuck Report to get this all delivered to you. We've been through this ridiculous print thing, Patrick. I'm going to go inside baseball a little bit here. I know we've gone long, but I have been stunned with the amount of complaints from print readers about there's not a word from the Canucks about the Canucks game last night in the print edition. We haven't done game stories in print for almost 3 years now. 2 full seasons. And so, but it just tells you the interest level has been cranked up. People are upset with that. So you can sign up for Canuck Report, as I've been letting I've been a subscriber for 40 years. People know who probably don't know what YouTube is, so I don't have to worry about mocking them here a little bit. I've been letting them all know, sign up to our newsletter. You will get everything delivered to your inbox. So go do that right now, and we will talk to you next week.